Hey guys, welcome back to the video. Today we're going to talk about climate change, and we're going to talk specifically about carbon and why it's maybe not everything that everyone's talking about, but on the same time, it's not nothing. So if you're on either side of the extreme politicized idea of carbon and climate change, I want you to really watch this video with an open mind, if that's okay. You may have also noticed that this video is sponsored. This is actually my first sponsorship. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, I've been running a YouTube channel for about 3 years now, and things that are going on behind the scenes is that as soon as you get to around 10,000 subscribers, you start getting spammed by all these companies who want to do sponsorships. It is stuff like software to do video editing, it's gaming, it's fashion, it's some of the most ridiculous things, and clearly they just want to throw ads anywhere. And what a lot of you guys don't know is that I've rejected every single sponsor who has ever contacted me, and it's in the hundreds. Today's video, however, is sponsored by a company called Ren, and I'm going to talk about these guys in a second, because we're talking about climate change, we're talking about carbon, and we're specifically talking about why carbon's not the complete story, but why carbon actually does also matter. So make sure that we're putting our open minds, we're not just bringing our prejudices into this video. Please watch this with an open mind. And as much as this video is sponsored by Ren, it is because they align 100% with my core beliefs. I'm actually really excited for the sponsorship. I hope it goes well, because this is a company that I want to work with. I want to work with these people. This is not some kind of payoff. I want to be working with these people. So let's get talking about climate change, why carbon is and is not what everyone says. And upfront, a disclaimer: I am an engineer, I am a scientist. However, I am not a lifetime expert in the subject of climate change. So everything that I say and everything that you ever read about this, make sure that you are getting the information from the source, the root, the scientists who are developing their thesis models. They're refining them as the years go by. And make sure that you're validating everything. So if I say something, don't just believe it. I want you to treat everything that I'm saying to you today the same way that you would if you heard some drunk person standing on a table at a bar saying stuff that made a lot of sense. You might think, hey, this guy actually might be onto something, but I might go and try to, double check what he's saying. Everything that I'm saying, as much as it's coming out of my mouth, it is from stuff like the IPCC reports. The things that I'm saying is from the lifetime career scientist, but there could be some loss in communication there. So make sure that any kind of foundation that you solidify as this is a fact that I know, first off, that's probably not a good idea. Everything is pliable, and we learn more all the time, and we refine our understanding of things. It's why there's been some miscommunications in this field in the past. But make sure that you're validating stuff. So let's talk about, first off, why I think carbon is not the entire picture. Now, one of the main reasons I don't like the whole discussion centered around carbon is that the carbon in the air has gone through massive cycles throughout the course of history. And this is the one thing that a lot of climate skeptics will latch onto, that carbon in the past was way more abundant than it is today. And the fact is that all misunderstandings are always rooted in some form of truth. And I believe that this is one of them. And notice that I said the word believe, because I'm not a scientist. In studying in this field, I am technically a scientist. But carbon in the air in the form of CO2 will actually just create more plants to grow. Carbon in the form of methane will not. However, it will over time get broken up by UV radiation and form into carbon dioxide. But there's a big difference between carbon in the air in the form of methane and carbon in the air in the form of CO2. More CO2 will actually just make plants grow more. Or will it? Now, this is a huge topic that a lot of skeptics really cling to, is that if we just keep putting more CO2 in the air, we're just going to get more plants. And that's true historically in the past, especially because we had a lot of plants. We had tons of plants, and tons of plants means lots of photosynthesis. But what it also means is lots of shade. And this is really, really, really important because humanity isn't just putting CO2 into the air at alarming rates, much faster in terms of rate than we have in the past. Sure, we hit those levels in the past, but the rate that we're putting it in is also important. But we're doing it in a world where we're cutting down forests, we're putting up concrete everywhere, and the world, if we just get more CO2 in the air, may not be able to handle it. We may not be able to actually grow the plants. And one of the reasons why is water. Now, the fact of the matter is that when we had a lot of forests and we had a lot of shade down at the soil level, when we got rains, the earth and the soils held that water. And when we had increases of CO2, we created tons and tons of new growth. Things are a little different now. And for the most part, we are erasing our forests drastically, very, very quickly. And the forests that we're replanting are just pines and lines. We're not replanting ecosystems. We're not replanting forest ecosystems. We're replanting trees. And there's a big difference specifically in how fast forest soils will be built and how fast nature will create new animals, insects, birds to reproduce and create the water cycles and the carbon and nitrogen cycles that we need to create the soil that's going to absorb the water. When we cut forests down, we really impact the land's ability to hold water. And we can see that in British Columbia, in California, with all these crazy forest fires because the hills were logged and cleared out. And now it's just forest fire mayhem over there. One of the main reasons is that the soils have lost their ability to hold water. I actually think that more of the argument should be towards restoring our natural ecosystems. And all of the things that we think are problems, all of those individual problems will all get solved if we just restore nature and let nature do what nature does. Now, specifically on carbon, we are producing more carbon than we ever have at an alarming rate. And even though we're locking down on how much we produce, we're actually still just skyrocketing. It has gone hockey stick vertical over the last 100 years, but that is like a microsecond in the cosm of how long the earth has been out there. What we're doing right now, make no mistake, whether you don't believe that carbon is the issue, whether you think that's a political thing, what we're doing right now and the way that we're living humanity is absolutely fundamentally unsustainable. So what does Ren actually do? Ren is a company that is a carbon offset company. So what it allows you to do is calculate what your current carbon footprint is, and then you can pay money to Ren out of the goodness of your heart because you want to help the planet. And the reason why I really like Ren compared to other companies, first off, is that this is a legit real company. If you go on sites like Trustpilot, Scam Detector, and you just look up different reviews, user reviews of this company, go ahead and do it because I did before I started this sponsorship. I want to bring you guys a quality product if I'm going to ever bring anything, and this is it. One of the most common comments that I get on my channel is, I want to help, but I can't. I'm stuck in an apartment. I'm stuck in a small plot of land. I have no ability to help. And a lot of people want to know permaculture principles that they can do that isn't gardening, that isn't planting trees. A company like Ren is perfect for the kind of person out there who has a job full time. They have to commute to work. because that's just the life that we live in, but they at the same time really want to make a difference. And this is how you can do it. So you can go to Ren's website, which I'll link below, and you can go and do your carbon calculator. Now, for those of you who are like, carbon's not the whole thing, even despite watching this video so far, I want you to understand that this is only a diagnostic tool to estimate how much someone could potentially donate to Ren, to the cause of improving the planet. But understand that the fundamental thing that's going on is that they're just providing a suggestion. And whatever their suggestion is, do whatever you want to do. If you want to give $1 a month, do that. If you don't want to give anything, don't give anything. If you want to just go planting trees, do that. But if you want to work through a company that actually takes your money and turns it into real world solutions, then this is the company that you want to do. And anyone who knows me knows how much my brand and my legacy is in my channel name. It's everything to me. Someone like Ren is that legacy building company. So you can go on, calculate your footprint. And the best part about what this company does is they will send you details on how your money is being used. This is really important for anything where you're going to just donate money to something, whether it's Red Cross, whether it's battered women's shelters, and whether it's fixing climate change. They will tell you how your money is being spent. And I've done a lot of research on how much of the money that you donate goes towards climate actions. And Ren is one of the best that there possibly is. So if you want to get value out of your money and you want it to do good things, this is where you want to go. So it's all of there's biochar in there, so you know I like that. Take a look at Ren, and I know a lot of you want to help but you can't, and this is perfect for you guys. So check out the link in the description below. Another reason why I actually think that reducing carbon footprint is a good thing is specifically that we don't have that many hydrocarbons left. Whether it's a climate change issue or not, we only have so much natural oil, gas, coal, that sort of thing. And I actually think that hydrocarbons tie into the Fermi paradox. Oil and carbon and coal in the ground is very easy to access, and it provides a ton of energy for its weight. It's very easy to get, you just need a shovel, and it's very easy to burn, you just need to develop fire. So a civilization can access that energy resource very early on in its technological development. And at the same time, it represents a resource that might take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of years of constant accumulation and buildup in order to create itself. And you can run through it like humans have in like less than 1,000 years. You're running through that entire resource. We've experienced tremendous technological advancement specifically because of the abundance of that energy. Now we get one shot at this. If we burn through all that energy and we can't transition towards sustainable, renewable, high energy alternatives, then that's it. We're sitting inside the 6th major extinction event, guys, and we've got hundreds of species going extinct every single day. We're in crisis mode, but we don't really even know that we're there. So the coal, oil, and gas, the carbon that we're putting in the air, it's important. It's important for us to use properly because we need to get ourselves to the next level. We need to build the infrastructure so that we can get off this. Even if it's not because we care about cleaning our air and cleaning our water and we care about climate change and ice caps melting, and ocean currents reversing, phytoplankton collapse of oxygen, mass extinctions, the things that we're facing in the future. Even if not for that, just for the fact that it's a non-renewable resource and we need to use it properly to get ourselves towards a clean producing technological society. Okay, now I want to add on to this video and talk about a really important misconception, and that is that water is abundant in the atmosphere, and it's a really strong greenhouse gas, actually. Now, the reason why this is basically not really relevant is because of how particle physics works. A gas having a large specific heat capacity just simply means that in order for the gas to rise 1 degree Celsius, for example, it has to absorb a certain amount of heat to do that. The larger the specific heat capacity, the more energy that thing will suck before it rises 1 degrees. Now, something with a really large specific heat capacity will actually suck a ton of energy before it rises 1 degrees. So one might actually think that having a high specific heat capacity might not be a problem for global warming because it's absorbing lots of heat and not warming up. The problem happens once it's warmed up. Once it's warmed up, in order to cool, it needs to release a lot of heat in order to cool. And this is why modeling stuff is really important. And this is why getting better models and comparing it with actual data is important. And this is why the models improve over time. And it's why models in the 70s or 80s were actually predicting global cooling. And this is a big point of contention. You guys were saying that we were going to cool before and that we are going to enter an ice age, and now we're saying that global warming and climate change is such a big deal. What's up with that? Well, that's just how science works. We've learned a lot about how particle physics work. The second thing that the modeling does to help explain why we care less about water and more about CO2 is the residence time of water versus CO2 in the atmosphere. As I mentioned, as these molecules and gases are absorbing heat, they're going to give off heat. However, the water actually recycles through the atmosphere very quickly. In fact, all the water vapor that's in the atmosphere of the Earth right now will come down as rain in roughly 1 week. And it will be cycled back with new evaporated water coming from our lakes, rivers, and oceans. The evaporation process is actually going to cool the Earth even further. So the net effect of this cycling is actually a slight cooling effect on the Earth. This modeling is really important because when CO2 goes into the air, it basically stays there. It stays there absorbing heat and then emitting heat. When water goes into the atmosphere, it does absorb some heat, but it falls down. It comes down, it warms the surface. There's a slight warming effect at the surface of the Earth, but then the evaporation effect provides a cooling effect. And then you have cold, cooler water going back into the atmosphere to absorb more heat. CO2 is what's called a forcing factor, and water is what's called a feedback factor. This couldn't be more important because as the Earth warms or cools, more water will evaporate away or condense out based on the specific relative humidity. And this is a really important factor because if the Earth continues to warm, we're going to get more evaporation of water, and the air will be able to hold more water, and thus will be able to hold more heat. So it's really important that we keep that temperature rise down. However, putting more water into the air is going to do nothing, because if we exceed the air's capacity to hold the water, it's just going to rain. It's really, really important distinction between CO2 and water. If we put more and more CO2 in the air, because the air can hold so much CO2 and we're nowhere near the upper limit of that, and because there's no natural rain cycle that scrubs CO2 out, really the only thing that is natural that does that is it comes out into the ocean to kill our ocean life. So there's really no good way in order for us to fix that problem of too much CO2. Like I mentioned before, if we get too much CO2, plants will pull it out, but they need
For every CO2 molecule, they need a water molecule in order to, assemble those and make sugars via photosynthesis. If there's no water in the soil, the plants physically can't perform photosynthesis. More water in the air will actually just mean more rain. It'll mean a faster turnover and it'll give us more precipitation cycles. More CO2 in the air actually scrubs itself out at the ocean surface and it comes out as carbonic acid. And the oceans are actually getting acidified now because we have so much carbonic acid going into the oceans from the CO2 in the air. That acid in the ocean is actually killing phytoplankton. And phytoplankton represent the vast majority of oxygen production on the planet Earth. So our oceans acidifying is not only an issue for ocean species, specifically, hard-shelled species that their shells are getting eaten away and they're going extinct. It's also impactful on the production of oxygen that we depend on to breathe because it's killing the phytoplankton. So this is why, when you get people who maybe aren't fully versed in the subject, making a comparison about one physical property of a gas, specific heat capacity, comparing, one thing, proportion of it in the air, and then making a conclusion, it's not really how science is done. Science is done through vast detailed modeling of all of the interconnected effects that are causing the event, and then it's severely criticized and peer reviewed. The IPCC papers and models are some of the most critiqued, heavily critiqued, and reviewed papers in the history of human science, and they're getting better and better and better as the years go by. Lastly, we actually want more water in the air because we want to plant more trees. And trees perform transpiration. That means trees will release water through their leaves into the atmosphere. So if we're going to put a greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, it's better that it would be water that's going to cause more rain cycles. Water is the source of all life on Earth. The more rain and water that we can get cycling, the more life that we can get growing, the more plants we can get growing. It's really important for us to get the water concentration higher by planting more trees. So we can't put all that water into the air if we've got all that CO2 in the air. We've got to pull that CO2 out and we've got to stop emitting it. And we really need to stop emitting methane.
The Earth is a ball of rock and it is sitting out in space and it's in direct thermal contact with an atmosphere of minus 272, 273 degrees Celsius, 0 Kelvin. That's what space is. It's freezing cold, really, really cold. And if we didn't have this blanket around our Earth to hold some heat in, then we would literally just be like the moon. We would be like Neptune. We would just be a frozen ball of whatever. Everything would be frozen. The atmosphere that we have is in a very delicate balance. So what can we do? I'm a solutions oriented person. I don't like it when someone just brings the problems. I've talked a lot about what we can do in many videos. We've got 6 major extinction event video where I give you 7 things that you can do. One of the things that we can do is reduce the amount of meat that we eat. Now this one is going to go in its own separate video. And what I really want to talk about there is, again, it'll be a balanced video because I actually believe that we should have some amount of meat because there are systems out there like silvopasture cattle that are actually a net carbon sink, and that carbon is being sunk to growing soils, which we use to restore our ecosystems. So anyone who just thinks cows are bad, I want you to understand, I'm not going to go into it too much today, but I want you to understand it's not the cows that are bad, it's the humans that are bad. It's the way that humans are running feedlot cattle and growing corn to transport it to the cows, carbon footprint all along, giving corn to the cows, which is not their natural diet. They burp more, they fart more, methane into the air. It's methane, not CO2. and then we take their manure, we pile it in giant piles. The piles go anaerobic. The anaerobic decomposition releases more methane. It's all of that stuff that plays into why cows are so bad. But I want you to understand that there are systems out there like silvopasture cattle that are net sequestering sources. They actually are better for the environment than if they didn't exist at all. And most importantly is that they take a lot of land up. So for people who are like, oh, we'll just transition towards sustainable regenerative cows and we'll supply the world's meat demand with silvopasture, ain't gonna happen. And the reason why is that silvopasture, being a sustainable system, takes way more land use than current agriculture fed cows. So we simply cannot transition the whole world's demand to silvopasture because we would run out of land available on the earth sevenfold. So we can't do it. Step one has to be reducing the amount of meat that you eat, specifically cows. And then we've got to stop eating so much fish because fishing is killing our oceans. You can look at the controversial Netflix film Seaspiracy for more information on that. The fish, anything we're doing that's unsustainable and that's polluting the planet with plastics or carbon or anything into the air, it shouldn't be politicized. It should just be, let's just stop doing that. Let's start living sustainable. So how you can do that? Step one, start eating less meat. Step two, start buying local, buy in season, so that by nature you're likely buying more local. That'll reduce the amount of footprint that's on everything that you eat. Try to buy less stuff from China and overseas. If you're in China, buy Chinese stuff. That's great. If you're close to China, buy all the China stuff. But if you're out west, buy local, support your local industries, not just for jobs, but for the carbon footprint associated with transporting that stuff here. Start your own gardens, start growing your own food, minimize the amount of waste you do, minimize how much stuff you buy, minimize how much you just throw stuff out. Try to find new homes and owners for the stuff that you don't use anymore. Not only will that get something out of your house and simplify your life, but it'll also reduce the carbon of the thing that they would have otherwise bought, but now they're buying off of you, a product that already exists. Because another aspect to this, and I know there's a lot, is resource depletion. Specifically certain trace minerals and elements like platinum and lithium that are going to be very, very big deals in the future, specifically if we're going to try to electrify the world and go that way. And on the electrification, everyone's, anti-lithium and battery tech, but there are also solid state batteries that are being developed. There are other ways to store energy, such as hydrologic dams, lifting by gravitational potential energy, basically lifting a giant weight up to the side of a cliff during the day with solar panels. And then in the nighttime, you take that same rock off and you turn that electrical crane into a generator. You produce power at night when the sun's gone. There's some fantastic technologies that I will get into in future videos if you guys liked this video. But for now, just understand that there's lots of things we can do. Probably the easiest for you to do if you're completely lost and this video is overwhelming, go rewatch it for sure to get a good understanding of these topics. But the easiest thing for you to do is probably going to be to check out the link below, the new sponsorship, and I like to call it a partnership. Hopefully this is going to be something long-term and lasting with Ren.co. This is a fantastic company, and if you want to start offsetting the lifestyle that we live, you want to make a difference, like a real difference, you want to plant trees, you want to plant ecosystems, you want to reduce pollution, you want to save something for the kids that are going to come after us, look at Ren.co and sign up for their deal. Comment below, and I really hope that the comments below can be not polarizing. We don't attack each other. We come together and we try to find a way out of this. We benefit the most by restoring our natural ecosystems. If that also happens to sequester carbon, then cool. If the anti-carbon crowd is wrong and that actually matters, then that's great. If the other crowd is wrong and carbon doesn't actually matter, then what's the worst that we do? We plant a bunch of trees and we clean up our water and we get a whole bunch of animals saved from extinction, and maybe we restore our natural ecosystems. That's not a bad downside, and I'm down with it. If you enjoyed this video at all, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, thumbs up this video, and leave a comment. All those things help by pushing this kind of content out to someone else. One last thing, and I'll say this again. The biggest impact that you can have on the planet is not your own impact. The biggest impact that you can have isn't going to be on your land. Your biggest impact is on your neighbor's land. So be a good example for everybody else. Show everyone how amazing this sustainable regenerative life is. Show everybody how amazing having a food forest can be. Make them want one of their own. Turn your work on your land into hundreds of other people in your social circle who follow you. Be a climate leader, be an environmental leader, be a permaculture leader. You don't need a PDC to do that. You just need to start going. You need to act, and then you need to show people how amazing this life can be and get them to do it. Guys, that is why an introvert is running a YouTube channel. It's because I know that the way that I can have the greatest legacy in my life, it's not planting trees on my property. It's getting you guys to plant trees. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, guys.